Appreciate you guys watching. Hope you're having a good time. Michael Thompson's having a good time. The freshman safety, when we showed you him yesterday wearing number 26 and practicing with the quarterbacks part of the time. Now, obviously, he can't wear 26 if he's going to be on offense because the 4x100 track man, as Ahmad was talking about earlier, DJ Monroe, he will also wears 26, so he's wearing Garrett Gilbert's old number. There are those American Gladiators punchers, and look at what Major Applewhite has. He has an actual boxing glove on a stick, and he's punching these guys. All right, Ahmad, outside of taking out some frustration, what do you get out of this?
Well, you know, you just love the creativity, too. I love that, like I said, these coaches are willing to take a risk in whatever it is. You can tell here, you know, what if a running back is rumbling into the end zone? He's 4 or 5 yards out. He's on that near sideline, and he's trying to stay up and do everything he possibly can. Once again, we told you, as a defender, Katie, I used to always love coming behind a ball carrier and trying to rake that thing out and punch it out. That drill there, just making you aware of that, and certainly the punching glove does help there. And I think, as you mentioned, Major Applewhite probably is not taking it lightly there. I'm sure he's going pretty hard on it. Absolutely.
But it's funny you said punching it out because we've all used that term, used that verb to, oh, he punched it out. They were literally trying to punch it out right there. Take a look at the defensive line right now. You saw Bo Davis in the safari hat. He's doing anything but chilling right now. He's coaching. He's got Dakari Pearson right next to him. We saw Roderick Wright. Dakari was an old player, old teammate of yours, played safety, also came in as a wide receiver, I believe. We saw Rod Wright. There's Bo Davis right there. He came in from Alabama. He's one of those guys that even if you didn't know about Bo Davis and his lineage, you'd say, well, I've seen the Alabama lines the last couple of years. He's obviously doing something right and obviously recruiting the right players. And there were some question marks about this Texas team heading into the year at this spot. Keyston Randall has certainly anchored a spot, and we've seen Calvin Howe. I know a guy that we also like is Ashton Dorsey. Ashton Dorsey, I know you've talked about his pad level. What makes his leverage and pad level so good?
Well, he's already a smaller player in terms of his size and height. But what you like about him is he does an excellent job. You can see him there in the middle, number 95, of making sure when he comes off of the ball, he stays low and he drives, which allows him to get into the backfield a lot sooner. This young man is gaining some of course, resemblance from guys like Casey Hampton.
That's saying a lot.
Frame, absolutely. But when you look at his quick twitch and his ball get off, he's a good player and one to certainly follow. Well,
he's one of the reasons why Ashton Dorsey is starting. You look at the Texas defensive line starters, Jackson Jeffcoat and Okafor. A lot of talk about Jeffcoat and Okafor, and we were here for summer practice. These guys were getting off the ball, causing all sorts of issues for Stacy Searles and his offensive line. One of the reasons why we think the offensive line's done pretty well so far. They haven't faced a defensive line like they faced in practice, but Jeffcoat and Okafor, they have not registered that sack. There's been some talk, you know, around practice, around Austin, around the message boards, you name it. You know, when are we going to see this defensive line and these defensive ends especially get after the quarterback? Is that something that's going to happen pretty soon? Because Steele Jantz he'll play around a little bit.
He will, and when you have a quarterback that tries to extend plays like Steele Jantz, you would expect that these defensive linemen, as we mentioned yesterday, are licking their chops. In addition to that, most teams have tried to rush the football. That's one reason why you haven't seen these two defensive ends be as active as you'd like. In addition to that, they've had a lot of quarterback hurries. And you can't just, I mean, you have to talk about the pressure
with
and
some
the hurries
picks off that, so that's even better than a sack.
That come along. And so I think those are the three things right now that stand out to me as a reason why the sack total has been low. But Texas traditionally has been up there each and every year when it comes to sack totals, and I would assume in the Big 12 with all the teams that like to pass the football, these young men will get an opportunity at some point in the season to show that they can and their ability to rush the passer.
You just saw the gentleman in the black shirt with the visor. That was Dakari Pearson. He's out here coaching and helping out Bo Davis, who's got stickball drill, a football on a stick, another stick that has been utilized here. I'm telling you, I feel like we're going back in time. I feel like you and I are about to go on Double Dare. You know, you've got cushions all over the place, cones. Where are the pies here? Now, what is this drill trying to accomplish?
Well, much like the linebackers running this drill, it's an alley drill, teaching you to take the proper angles at the ball carrier. And for these defensive linemen, constantly getting your knees up, much like a running back. You know, you always hear a running back going back for a very long time, telling them to keep their knees high. Well, what does that do? That prevents you from any type of traffic down low, but it also, that leg drive will keep you on your feet. And so what they're teaching them here now is the same thing, simulating that over the dummies and then running that lane, finishing off the play with a tackle, is what Bo Davis and this defense wants to instill in their defensive linemen.
What are they working on here?
Well, this is just that punch that we were talking about as far as Ashton Dorsey and his ability to come off. It's one thing to come off with low pad level and to have great body lean. There's another thing when you have a treacherous punch, when you can move an offensive lineman back with the upper body. And that's what they're working on now. They've taken away all of their leg strength by putting them on their knees. So what you're getting now, this is just an old school bench press back in the weight room, and it's a great drill for them to work on that punch, put it in the right place. You see where they're targeting right at the breastplates. That is where you can control an offensive lineman, shrug him off if needed. It's a great drill for them to establish great hand placement and the power with their hands.
Well, we talked about offensive linemen, obviously. When they get inside you right there, they're going to hold. You see holding by every team at almost every level, almost every game. Defensive linemen can get away with that, too. You can control a guy. You know, I mean, obviously you want to get off that, but if you don't know where you're going, you've seen more defensive holds called the last couple of years, but Bo Davis obviously working. He works these guys for defensive tackles. We've covered a lot of practices. He seems to do a lot of detail drills.
And that's what it is. These are finishing drills, and you break down the play. This is what you love about what these coaches are doing. As I mentioned, he's taking away their lower body strength. If you can learn to work your hands, it makes it so much easier. And to bring these hips, as you can hear him telling them, bring those hips. That's where your power is at. And it makes it so much easier during the course of a game, having been trained like this, to go out and translate that to the football field.
Well, this defensive line could have their hands full. We talked about Steele Jance, Chantrell Johnson, sophomore running back, and James White, also a sophomore running back. Johnson definitely has some wiggle to him, and James White can just flat out fly. So they've got a couple running backs, including Steele Jance. Take a look at the Texas defense. Big 12 ranks this season. 15 points per game. That's what they're giving up. That ranks second in the Big 12. They've been great against the pass, pretty good against the run. Max said he wants to stop some of those explosive plays they've had up the middle. Rice was able to run some traps up the middle. We saw BYU bust a couple, especially in the first half, and even UCLA was able to get some on a couple of those scoring drives. Sacks, that's what they've really been missing. Ahmad just talked about it. Should be some more opportunities for sacks against Steele Jance and Iowa State. You hear the horn. You're going to hear 6 periods as you watch Texas practice for this hour. There's Mr. Dakari Pearson. You feel old, Ahmad, having a guy who's coaching there now?
Katie, I do. I do. In fact, you know, Major Opwhite, a guy who I was a captain with here in 2001, is actually the offensive coordinator. And that certainly makes you feel real old, but...
We were all the same year, so I feel old,
indeed.
too. So.
And this is going to be a unit, this defensive line, and those two players in particular, Keyston Randall, Ashton Dorsey. Two guys that need to get started early on to stop that run, which will force Iowa State Cyclones to throw the football. And you just saw it here, this secondary, opposing passing yards per game. They rank first in the Big 12, and it puts the pressure on that secondary and allows that secondary to make those plays, get those interceptions. But it all starts with those two men right there, Keyston Randall and Dorsey. What their ability to handle the run when they do, and they will run it up the middle, and they will try to attack them early on. If they can stop them, it really opens up things for this Texas defense.
There's big old Taylor Bible. And how about Chris Whaley? You know, Chris Whaley's got to be thinking about the Henry Melton story. Melton came here as a tailback, was moved to defensive end. The Bears took a shot on him in the draft, and now he has turned into Tommy Harris Jr. Guy's 3 sacks in 3 games from the defensive tackle spot. He's been all over the field in the cover 2 zone that they run. That is the Tampa 2 pretty much. That's huge. I mean, they need that nose guard to be big, and he has been big. And Chris Whaley is following the same suit. Now went to defensive end, has moved to defensive tackle. And now we'll take a look at the wide receivers, the Texas depth chart. Mike Davis, 192 yards. We showed you all the yards earlier, but really some guys you want to focus on. Miles Onyebuye is a guy who's playing quarterback, but they're going to need some depth. With John Harris out, Darius White, and Onyebuye, they're going to be counted on to step up, and we'll see if these guys are ready to play.
As you heard Coach Akina say it earlier in the interview that you did with him, when one guy loses playing time for whatever reason, it's another opportunity for another player to gain that playing time. And these young guys, trust me, have been wanting their opportunity, and however it's come, you know, you don't want to see a teammate be injured. But, you know, in football, that is going to happen, and that's why you have a depth chart. That is why you build a depth chart saying, in case this guy isn't here, this guy should be ready. And so I think for those young wide receivers, they'll be challenged, and one of them can make a great name for themselves and become a household name just by making a few plays, and it can certainly happen at that position.
Well, quarterbacks will be getting the ball to the receivers, and obviously David Ash and Case McCoy, the two main guys you're expected to see. Number 14 Ash right now. Actually, that's going to be Case McCoy throwing the ball to Darius White, the sophomore from Dunbar. One of the best athletes on this football team. Needs to be a little bit more consistent, as the coaches have said, but they still expect a lot of big things out of him. And here's a guy who's been about as consistent as you can be. Jackson Shipley, always precise routes, made a one-handed grab yesterday. He continues to impress in practice. And for a guy who played in the NFL at DB, I know anytime I see you watch, anytime I watch you watch him play, it's pretty amazing because you just flip out. I mean, you seem to be pretty blown away with what he's able to do at 18.
He's just seasoned. This young man is a prime rib with all the seasoning, all the dressings, the salad, the potatoes. He's got it all. And you love his work ethic. When you talk to coaches and you talk to players on this team, they're impressed with his skills, but they're more impressed with his personality during practice. Because if you really want to be a great player around here, and trust me, he knows what being a great player is like around here. His brother has set the standard at this position. So he knows. He's familiar with what it takes, and trust me, he's glanced at those record books for sure that his brother's name is all at the top on most of those charts. And so this young man is coming out here with a purpose. He's practicing hard each and every day, and he's leading his teammates even as a freshman. I can't wait to see him progress, and even what he'll look like at the end of this year, I think it's going to be very impressive.
What do you like when you watch White as a wide out?
His size. Yeah, he's a match up. A mismatch there, and he's a nightmare for defensive backs. If you're a larger defensive back, his body weight and his lean allows him to run through perhaps a press, run through a sitting corner in cover two, trying to force you on the insides. But on top of that, you talked about yesterday his ability to jump and leap. Right. And you always need one of those types of wide receivers. And I think in the red zone at some point, you better believe they're going to throw one up to him. Case McCoy, David Ash, at some point you will see how this young man can leap. And you just hope he can haul one of those in and really become a dominant player via the air that I think will help this Texas offense down in the red zone become even more of a threat.
Take a look at Michael Thompson right there. You're looking at the Texas quarterbacks. We'll be back with Texas practice right after this.